Ensurigakusei. Thank you for tuning in to Mizuchi-Dojo Radio, a weekly podcast featuring discussions between the best martial arts in Western New York on a variety of martial arts concepts. I'm the host, Bill Reynolds, and joining me today are these panelists. We have Brandon Czerwinski, trained since 2009, second Q in Krav Maga, Kris Davison, a fourth degree black belt in ITF Tae Kwon Do, and Rob Guida, training since 2010, owner-operator of MSD Kenpo Karate since 2012, second degree black belt in Kenpo Karate. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, panelists. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know more about these guys, and if after you have some questions that you want to direct to them directly, check out our show notes for more information about them and how you can contact them, or perhaps learn more about the schools or what they teach or where they can be found. All right. This episode is going to focus in on something that came up last week, which was, I think, where someone brought up this idea of what I'm going to call a belt baseline, or that is to say, and I was very careful about this when I was creating my school, that I wrote down the curriculum and therefore the expectations for promotion to each belt going all the way up to fourth degree black belt. And so there's very specific expectations for all of those belts, from going from white to yellow all the way up through there. And we've discussed how it's a responsibility of instructors to evaluate people individually, and including what you expect out of their performance for any given promotion. But is that fair? What does that mean? And what does it mean? What does it mean for those belts, those rankings? I don't think anybody particular suggested doing this, but I'm gonna.
Well, Rob should start it, though.
Rob should start it?
Rob should.
Well, I mean,
All right, Rob. Hajime.
okay, sure, why not? I have changed my opinion over the years. My opinion has changed. Currently, I think of it more like a school course. My opinion was changed by my teacher, Mrs. C, and Datu Hartman as a teacher too. What I mean by a school course is like I've got two kids, and they're both great kids, and they're both passing high school. One gets 105 average, one gets a 70 average. They're both passing. One is different than the other, and she gets recognized for that. But they're both passing. So yeah, sure, there's a baseline, but there's a very different look to somebody who scored 70% and somebody who scored 105%. But they both pass. So I do think there's a baseline. But I mean, I don't, each school's got to define what that is for their own belts and how they want to do it. And I think that's important, right? We can't say you should be like this or that. There's no hope of martial arts. But at the same time, yeah, you could have two purple belts that are vastly different and they both pass, but they're vastly different.
But should there be? Before we get into the general discussion, Kaiju Customs. What are your thoughts? Opening thoughts.
Surely. And this is it's for me. It's a question. Like I said, I hope I never have to implement an answer to this, because I don't think I could. Because to me, whatever the curriculum is that the school owner has or the system has, maybe they're strictly following some set of rules that is above them, whatever. I think there's a moral hazard in promoting students that don't meet the curriculum, whatever the curriculum is. For this belt, you have to break a board with your right hand, you have to throw a good side kick, and you have to know this form. And maybe the only criteria for passing is the school owner says you can do it. Whatever. I would have a really difficult time giving the same belt to two students where one knows the form, but can't perform it. One student broke the board, one student didn't break the board. One student has no concept of the side kick, one student has an excellent side kick. I could not in good conscience give them the same belt. So that's where I'm like, is there a baseline or isn't there? To me, if the baseline is those three items, and this student did it and this student didn't, even though they're great, they both come to class, they both train real hard, one just can't do the curriculum at this stage of their career, they don't get the same belt. And I would probably be out of business real quick. But that's just me.
Okay, Brandon, opening thoughts.
Well, I am along the lines of what Rob said. I mean, it's the classic joke, right? What do you call a doctor who graduated at the bottom of his class? A doctor. They never talk about the other end of that joke, though, right? What do you call a doctor who got a 4.2? Well, he's still a doctor, but whew, or she. But dang, very intelligent, very, very apt, very accomplished. But the curriculum's the curriculum. Now, I will challenge Kaiju Customs a little bit, in that, yes, you do require that, but also Pride Martial Arts requires a character reference once you get to a certain point. There's more than just that, and really, it's just more overt with Pride. Everybody's going to have that character reference requirement. Bill isn't going to let, unless he's far more utilitarian than I thought, isn't going to let somebody who's like, man, I just love beating up homeless people on the weekends. He's not going to train that person up to the fourth degree black belt and say, yes, please open a Mizuchi-do school, please. I would love for you to represent me. But
yes. Please go to tournaments, wear your gi proudly.
Yes, and kick them after you've won, please, while they're on the ground. Count Dante everything. But at the same time, yeah, there is, I also agree with Kris in that there is a baseline, and everyone's guilty of it to some extent at some point in their career. I say this as a, non-master, I don't own a school, but I've seen it plenty of times. Yeah, that person got the belt. Why? Well, they donated a lot to the school. Okay, they can barely kick the board. Okay, their kata looked more like they were sort of wiggling in place for approximately a minute and a half. It happens. It happens. And I do think that should be, like Kris, I think I would probably not have a very successful business because I would require certain things. But I agree with Rob. There's a curriculum standard. It's what's required. The same as what's on the wall at Rob's dojo. The same as what's in Bill's book. You need this for this belt. When you have it, you have it. There's always, there's always circumstance beyond. There's the character. There's, is that person really trying hard? They really understand the spirit, but maybe they just literally can't do something. They have one arm. They can't do the U-punch. They're paraplegic. Yeah, sure. You could still award them based on character and just people would know. Yeah, no, the paraplegic person can't do the tornado kick.
Or just generally like the lotus kick
or a kick. Yeah. But yes, yes, there should be a standard held, but at the same time, it's a curriculum standard and it can vary. And people just accept that. The students know. When the students know that, yeah, those two are brown belts, but that one's a killer. And that one got there. Yep.
Okay, but the whole question is, if there's a baseline,
yeah,
it has to apply to everyone.
But I guess
it does.
The one thing I'm like, maybe we're not all speaking on the same exact concept. When you say baseline, as an example, I'm going to refer that to Rob's use of the old score out of 100 type of model, and say that you had to get at least a 70% or higher to pass, and by passing with that as your average score, you proceeded to the next grade and or you graduated from high school. And failing that, 69 lower, You didn't, and you failed. Just like I would say that if I had somebody who came and they weren't able to demonstrate 70% of the material that they're required for that, then I would have to say, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to try this another day. I'm not promoting you. But if they got the 70 and someone next to them got an 80 and somebody else got 100, as Robert said, they all passed. They all passed. And if anything, like one thing I think about is that I don't know about your guys' high school, but mine, they had four levels of training. We had we called it special education classes, and then there was the basic or general classes, and then there were the advanced classes, and then there was the AP classes. And, so was everybody in AP? Nope, not everybody took APs. Did everybody get into the advanced classes? No, most people were in the basic general. And they go on, they get the same diploma the advanced kids get, that the kids who took APs get. But I will say that kids who did this special ed curriculum, they got a special ed diploma. And so I don't know if you're suggesting that there should be a special ed version of belts, but so okay,
Nick, turn off
you've been
my
raising your
video.
hand. You've been raising your hand, Kaiju Customs. What you're thinking over there?
So, so I understand what Mr. Guida and yourself are saying, but it's this to me. This is not a one-to-one correlation between getting good grades and being able to perform these, any number of functions at a martial arts school. So, yes, you get a 70, you pass. Everybody that gets above a 70 passes. If you're saying getting that 70 means, when you translate it to martial arts, that you actually broke the board, you threw the kick, and you know the form, what's the incentive to get a 90? I broke the board, I know the form, and
It
I
has
threw
to be
the
your
kick.
personal ambition.
Well, okay.
Well, no, that's interesting. Okay, so here's how I think forms are a really good way of explaining it. And I hope, Kris, you've seen some good Kenpo forms, because they can be
Your
long and
student
intricate.
Miranda has an excellent, I think it's a
Good
short
example.
form 3, short form 4.
Perfect form. Perfect example.
Excellent.
So that is a very intricate, long form for a 12-year-old. I do not expect every single person of her rank in her age to be able to perform that at will. I expect them to follow her and be able to do it watching her. So if I put, and here's an example, if I put Brendan, who's been studying martial arts for how long, Brendan?
Since 2009, I hate math.
Okay, whatever, 20 some years.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
put him in my studio and I put Miranda in front of him, he's not going to be able to follow her. He doesn't know the form. He can't do it. But I do expect a student who's going to pass that rank to be able to follow her and do the form. Because that to me, that tells me they know the form. They're just, for whatever reason, unable to perform it in front of a group of people, or they're nervous or whatever. But they know it enough that as long as they're doing it with somebody, they can do it. Right? So they pass. I expect her to be able to do it by herself. And I call her out and I say, you do it by yourself. And to reward her for that, I call her out in front of the whole school, promote her to the same belt rank, but give her the red stripe or give her the recognition
Yes,
or do whatever it
yes,
is.
she's the valedictorian.
Right. The valedictorian, whatever you want to call it. And I say, in front of everybody, you had a better test than everybody else. And here's your reward for that. And
Well,
so, they all pass, but there's a difference.
Yeah,
And it's
but
I understand that. I respect that.
it sounds like are you like trying to get at geez, I really don't know what to call you. I just see that label you put up there. All right, Kaiju. Are you talking only, you're not talking about failing to honor the person who excels in the material, actually goes beyond the baseline, but I guess you're more concerned about the person who does not does not reach the baseline and yet also shouldn't be
Well,
failed.
what I'm saying is whatever the baseline is to get to, we'll just talk in my basic understanding of Kenpo rankings. A first degree brown needs to know these 5 things. What I'm hearing Rob say is the exceptional first degree brown can do them on their own, but the average first degree browns have to follow the exceptional first degree brown.
Yeah, that's it. That's the way I put it. And here's another way I'll put it. If you can't follow, like if I put you in a group and you can't follow Miranda, that means that you're not getting tested. That means
Okay,
you don't know
you don't make
enough.
the baseline.
You don't know enough to be able to follow somebody who knows it. Tells me that you didn't put the work in to be able to do it.
So is this then more like questioning the judgment of the instructor who clears somebody for a promotion event? That basically are saying, to your opinion, Kaiju, that they're, and maybe you too, Brandon, this idea that uh, it's not whether in the test itself that you would expect to see a performance so poor that they really shouldn't be promoted. It's that they shouldn't have been asked to stand up for promotion to begin with because they just didn't have it yet. They didn't have the material enough. Is that what you're getting at?
So I'll jump in real quick here. Actually, for me, and I know this isn't, here's my business argument after I say it. For me, I'm actually against requiring minimum periods per belts. I'm for you know the material, you demonstrate the material, yes, you can get the belt.
Are you talking
Now,
about does like black belts?
any any
Oh,
belt.
okay.
Um,
How
like
many schools use temporal guidelines for belt promotion? Beyond, I mean, like I know I've heard it with black belt, where they'll say like you must do a year and a half or every year that for the number of dans that you're
right.
going for or something like that. Which I
Well,
also personally
yeah.
I think that's BS, but
Right.
um,
When we get to honorifics, yeah, you can put a timeline, whatever. But I'm talking, there's a suggested timeline, right? Like beginner belts are typically what, 3 to 6 months, depending on the school. Usually more 3. But, somebody gets there in 2, somebody gets there in 1.5, and they're there, they have it cold.
hmm.
To me, that's the way you reward somebody who's performing faster. And my business argument is if they're that passionate about it, they're not leaving when they get the black belt. They're going to stay and learn some more.
Wait, so I just kind of know this because I don't do what you're talking about. So, but I'm wondering who there Robert Kaiju. Is that how the schools you were in? Do they like say, I know you got the material, but you have to be at least 3 months at this rank before you're eligible for promotion.
I don't do that. I run into a logistical problem. I run two belt tests a year, and one in January, one in July. And
Mhm.
so just
Hmm.
that's just how I organize it. And so I don't make anybody wait. If they're ready, they test. The unfortunate part is like if you come in July, you're not ready for the July test, so you might have to wait 6 months for the next test. But I don't run
Right.
special tests,
That's for
throughout
all your belts, all
all my
colors.
belts.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
do strike tests throughout the year, right? Strike tests are irrelevant, but I mean, like actual belt testing, I do 2 a year, and it just keeps logistically, it keeps everything kind of easy for me.
And it's going to
Mhm.
change per school. I will call out the training edge here. They do strict time requirements. That's their
Huh.
only requirement.
Wait,
Um,
what? That's
yeah, that's the
just
requirement. Now
time.
they say you'll have it by then. Take that for what you will.
Hmm.
They have and they swear by a time requirement. They say, you stay this amount of time, you show the dedication and you'll get the next belt. I am very much of the you demonstrate the skills and you get the belt. But back on this topic,
Wow.
and I wish I wish that Derek was here because I'm sure he has his opinions on that as well. And I like I said, I haven't had a chance to train at Hybrid Defense yet, but I'm sure he if he uses it, he has a reason to use it, so
Oh,
he
I
would have
thought you
an.
were gonna say I'm sure that day is coming, but okay.
Um, well, one of these years, I go everywhere, but getting there faster. Like I specifically took private lessons with you when I was getting ready to move back in 2022 to get to my brown belt. So technically, I think if we count it, I technically got there sooner than the recommended time. Um,
Well,
it
not
could have.
not my recommended time, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was whichever. It was either a little later or a little sooner, but it was when I had the material. So my argument here is, to Chris's point, when you hit the baseline, you get the belt. If you hit that baseline sooner, if you pick it up faster, there's no real accounting for, okay, I look, I have killer elbows. Like I enjoy Muay Thai. I've done a lot of different arts. Not a lot of people are going to match up to my elbows at, the level belts that I'm at in different systems. Doesn't mean that they don't meet the elbowing requirement for an elbow strike for the system that we're training on. You could even take it outside of martial arts. I got summa cum laude in my bachelor's degree. That made me no different from the others, other than I said summa cum laude. Now, did it mean some people were like, well, no, yeah, I worked with him on projects. We should talk to that guy about a contract or something. Yes, but it's no different. I met the curriculum requirements just like the others. So faster, maybe a little more word of mouth, maybe a little more individual respect, but there's only so much you can do with the system. So yeah, it has to be curriculum at some point. If you use a time-based system, anybody listening, we'd love to hear your feedback on the time-based system. Other than, hey, I'm running a business, man, leave me alone. I get it. But if you have a philosophical reasoning for the time system, we'd love to hear.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time since, I'm not trying to sound like a jerk. It's been a long time since I was a color belt, but when I was, there was a number of classes requirement
There it
and a
is.
time requirement.
Yep.
So
And
in
that'll
other
happen
words,
in some schools.
you would need, in a testing period, you would need X number of classes and 3 months or 4 months or whatever it was. I don't remember, to be able to test for your next belt.
Yeah, I don't personally believe in that, but that's just me, and I
I
don't know the school, so
I and not just based on this discussion, but I'm of a mind, if someone's there 6 days a week and they're picking up material faster and better or whatever than someone that's there 2 days a week, there shouldn't be a time requirement. But for someone that's there 2 days a week, maybe they're not ready at the next belt test interval.
But I
right now
guess,
make that make sense in a contract.
I would say though, because I remember when I was at Western New York, it wasn't a time requirement. It was a time expectation, is what they would say. They said, in the lower belts, we do stripe testing with this frequency, and therefore your ability to promote is probably going to take you a month to get this much, so it's going to take you 3 months to get a beginner belt, and then it's going to take you 2 months to get a middle intermediate belt, and that's going to take you 3 months to get the advanced belts. And so that times out to like 3.5 years, and so on, so on, so on. But I don't recall anybody saying, oh, it's too soon, And certainly that's sort of like what I took then with mine. Entirely performance based. If you can demonstrate the curriculum, as soon as you do, you earn the stripe, and as soon as you earn all the stripes, you test. And if that meant you did that like within a month, or if you did that over 10 months, you test when you can demonstrate the stuff. But I guess, for me, there's another piece in here because that I think about, which is, when I think, like just recently had a black belt grading, and when I think about how people executed different techniques, some of them did some techniques masterfully, and then other techniques, the other person did them way better than them. In the end, I felt that they both showed sufficient, overall on average. And I guess that's part of it too, like getting back to this idea of grades. Like I wouldn't want somebody to think like, it's just like, did you get like karate as an example? Karate is just a class, that it like biology or algebra. And so you have to get a passing grade in karate when really maybe I don't know if you meant this, Rob, but more like Getting your belt is like passing the grade, which consisted of passing, 5 or 7 classes. And so you had to show proficiency or sufficient proficiency in a bunch of different things. And some of them you probably weren't spectacular, or even maybe in one of them you kind of sucked, but you also got an A in this other one, and so your
Right,
average
right,
all
right.
rolled out to like be
That's
enough.
that's kind of how I look at it. I mean, like I've got a guy and he's doing it for 10 years now and he's a good kid and he trains really hard, but he's terrible at forms. It's just not something he likes doing. He does them, he's fine at them, but he's just not good, right? He's never gonna be good. He shouldn't say that. If he wants to be good someday, maybe he can be, but it's not his,
Yes,
you
but
know.
while he doesn't, he's never going to be.
But while he doesn't, but he's okay,
Hmm.
right? His sparring is fantastic. His techniques are fantastic. So what am I supposed to do? Fail him because he doesn't do excellent at forms? Like that
But,
doesn't make any
no,
sense to me.
but the baseline is he can complete the form.
But he can complete the form, right? It's ugly, but he can complete the form.
Yeah,
That's
he
fine.
did the thing. He did the steps and he did
Yeah.
them off memory. He just looked like a dying fish. It's
My
fine. He got
Yeah.
through it, you know? Yeah.
my issue comes up when a student can't do the form or can't break the board or can't do the kick, and they're the same belt anyway.
Yeah.
I have a
We have
real
a
problem.
derogatory term for that, right?
Yeah, but
McDouble.
I mean, like,
Oh,
Right.
like Chris, like, why? I don't know. Like to me, it's like I have to understand why that person was passed.
mm.
Like maybe there's something that I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
That
I
is
got
a
a
great
kid.
question because I feel like every time you say it, Chris, I feel like, well, why isn't that kid just failed? He said, Today isn't your day."
Well, so I've seen examples where someone who may not have been ready to test was allowed to test to show them that they weren't putting in the work.
Yeah.
So they were allowed to test and they were not advanced.
Hmm.
And then they
I
were
mean,
Totally.
explained why. Like you're not putting in the work. Here's the video of what you just did. Do you think that's good enough to pass? Look at it objectively. No, it's not. So I've seen it done with the purpose of getting through to someone that wasn't getting the message.
I would say in rare
and maybe
occasions.
that's a pretty good example of tough love, but
yeah, but that's such a
Yeah. That
that's
person
Brandon,
such a
just quit,
shitty thing.
you know?
That's such not knowing anything about the situation. It's such a shitty thing to do to somebody, to a family, right? Grandma's there, grandpa's there, mom and dad are there, and you fail them. Like, like I've looked at people and said, "You're not ready to test," and here's the reason why you're not ready to test. I'm not testing you, and when you're ready, in 6 months you can test again. But I've never failed anybody at a test. Like if you're gonna fail at the test, don't come to it. Like, don't. Like, I don't know, man. That's a tough one.
yeah, like
yeah,
it is
Yeah.
a hard one to understand because, like, I know, like, outside of black belt pre-tests and giving the black belts one last chance to demonstrate they're all set, and everybody can be assured that when grandma and grandpa show up for their black belt exam, they're gonna pass because they've already passed, really.
I do
This
that
is
every belt,
Yeah,
every
right.
test, every belt.
Well, but for me, I don't do that with the color belts. What I do for them is I lead them through the stripe process, but then when they've completed their stripes, I then like re-review the material with them and say, okay, let's go over this all again before we schedule the actual exam, and let's make sure it's all good enough.
mm,
Because I think that would be the most horrible thing to, like, have some say, okay, show up, and it's supposed to be, like I said, the difference between what I look at is a black belt exam where if they freeze up, if they like have I can't just say, oh, that's okay. I'll say, wow, today wasn't your day. I hope I never have to say that. But with the other stuff, I call them promotion events that essentially they've already passed, and now they're just going to demonstrate what we already know they can do, and then they just go. So that's an interesting scenario you're putting
and
out there, Chris.
and there are probably things that I don't know because when I saw this happen, the parents were there and they were totally fine with it.
Well, they probably
So
informed them
maybe,
for some time.
maybe it was
Yes, I hope
arranged.
so.
Maybe it was arranged. I
And
don't
Chris,
know.
I will say that I have had parents come up to me in the years and say, whatever, little Johnny is acting like an asshole at home. And I'll say, look, do you want to hold them back from the test? Because the end of the day, like you're the parent. And they're like, yes. And they brought him to the test and I made him sit and watch the test and I didn't promote him. But I did that because the parents wanted me to do that. Right?
So there was a goal in doing it.
Not because he was a bad student, and not because he was bad in class, and not because he didn't know the material, but because he was bad at home. And so, in that circumstance, like that actually happened to me. Like I could say that, yeah, I did that. Maybe
I think their version is just one step extra. I will say, to play devil's advocate, not that I think people should in this day and age for martial arts. Again, people aren't cleaning your floors desperately hoping for, a job in the martial arts afterwards. Like, shishi-fu, none of that. But it is kind of exciting, right? When I went to my first tournament and I ended up pulling first place for forms, which I will say I'm not that great at forms, so I was very excited because I had no guarantee, right?
Mizuchi students historically are excellent at forms.
I do well.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah. Though you did congratulate me at that tournament, Rob, which made me happy.
Did I? I don't remember.
Yeah, you're like, thank goodness there's a karate guy here showing these Tae Kwon Do dudes what's up.
You didn't like me back then. I liked you back then.
Aw, thanks. You did invite me to break a cinder block. That was a lot of fun.
There's more where that came from, baby.
Yeah, that was a beautiful friendship formed from the destruction of that cinder block. But yeah, it's exciting, and I think both had their purpose, right? You're trying to teach, especially kids, is teaching discipline. We don't send them to military school anymore. You take them to martial arts, and maybe they learn a little bit as they grow up. But yeah, I mean, if they're meeting the baselines and the positive reinforcement is better, which most times it is, which is why it's like you just said, promotion events, Bill, or like you said, Rob, if they're not ready, they're not ready. Usually positive reinforcement does the trick in this day and age. Every now and then, there's a real prick out there.
Some of my best lessons learned have been from tough love.
And I've met some very arrogant students who weren't as good as they were under the impression they were, even if they were pretty decent at some things. And they needed that little nudge. I mean, heck, I needed that nudge at one point. You need to struggle in some way. So I think everybody's in a way in agreement, even though we've been arguing, like, yes, there's a baseline. They should not be promoted. You fall into McDojo territory if you're like, no, yeah, yep.
Enough time has passed. Thanks for the money.
That's right. Thank you for that money. At the same time, I always joke the Knights of the Old Republic thing. There's Jedi Consulars. I'm like, you're great at kata. There's Jedi Sentinels. You're great at self-defense. And Jedi Guardians are great at sparring.
That's a good game.
Yeah, it's a solid game. It's one of my favorites.
Game.
Nerds.
Yeah, but that's how I view the different martial artists. It's like you're either a Consular, a Sentinel, or a Guardian. I'm a Sentinel. You spar all the time. You're a Guardian.
So interestingly, like that from a whole promotional event thing, that's one of the things I've changed over the last few years, where that's all I do now is promotional events. And because if you're not ready to promote it, you don't go. And so everyone who goes gets promoted because I invited you to go and you're ready to go. And I tell parents ahead of time, I go, look, the test is the week before in the school. This is the test. When we go to the gym and they do it in front of 100 people and they do it in a place they're not comfortable with, they're going to look terrible. Because there is no way the 8-year-old little Johnny is going to be ready to do it in front of 100 people in the gym when everyone's watching him. He's going to look terrible.
Stares.
Right. Like I expect him to do it in the school. Everyone claps. He's promoted. He's ready to get the promotional test. And then he goes and he demonstrates in front of, and everyone claps and he gets his belt and everyone's happy. And so like I completely changed how I do it, Bill, the last few years. And that's how I do it now too. where the
We are at
test
under
is a
2
couple of weeks
minutes.
before in school. You've passed the test. I look at him and I say, "There's no reason to be nervous. Don't come to me crying before." And inevitably, what happens? Half the kids cry, and they
Yeah.
line up because they're
Mighty
nervous, and they do
tears.
the best they can.
All right. Any other quick, like less than a second thoughts?
No.
Okay, we're good. All right, gentlemen, awesome. And then I'll say, Yame. Thank you, panelists. And thank you, listeners, for your attention. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, and you can share them to us on our threads, Mizuchi_dojo, or you can email us at mizuchi.dojo.hanbu@gmail.com. Also, please consider supporting this podcast via our Patreon, where our dollar subscribers can help not only keep this podcast on the air, but they can also have the opportunity to vote on what topics this panel will discuss in future episodes. Higher contributors can have their feedback read on air, and even higher contributors can have their regular shout out for their martial arts school of their choice. You can find more information about this in our show notes, as well as contact information for our various panel members and what they're up to if you're interested. Thank you. Mata Yasai.